Guys and girls, I'm back at Into Moto. I'm guessing they've had a delivery or something. There is bikes everywhere, and they tend to be a lot of the smaller capacity bikes, the 125s in particular. This place is absolutely rammed with them, and they're letting me take one out today. So I've had a look around and I've picked one that I've never reviewed on the channel before. So yeah, let's have a look what it is. And to please all of the Japanese bike loving folk out there, it is the Honda CB125R. Now this has got a couple of years on it. It's from 2020, so it is 4 years old. It has been used. I've been told it's been used a lot, but I've not seen the miles on it yet. What I will say from my initial look round is it's absolutely mint. Let's have a look round. I'll throw some specifications at you as we're going. Come on. Let's start with the full 360. You can see with this bike, it is gleaming. It looks like a brand new motorcycle. The previous owner or owners, I don't know how many people have owned it in those 4 years, but whoever has owned it has really looked after this bike. Wow. The only telltale sign of this bike that it is actually ever been used is actually the tyres. It's just everything about it, it screams brand new. There you go, you've had all angles. Let's now talk specs. Let's start with brakes, shall we? So it's got a single disc at the back, single piston, and Nissan brakes. So yeah, decent brakes at the back. And then we've got the 2-piston caliper on a single disc at the front. Some good quality brakes, but you would expect that because these would have been very expensive new. The thing that's drawing my eyes, it's got a Black Widow exhaust. A nice sound is what I'm hoping for. It does have rear pegs for a pillion. Now, looking at the seat, it looks like the pillion is pretty much at the same level as the rider. It doesn't seem to be raised much on the back. The pegs do seem to be quite high, however, at the back compared to the front ones. So I don't know how comfortable that would be for a rear pillion, but if you've got one of these, if you've been on the back of one of these, let me know. This 125cc bike has got 13 horsepower, so it surprises me that a brand like Honda haven't just gone straight for the maximum to get it closer to the 15. However, 13 still respectable. We'll see what the performance is like. I might throw a performance testing. So it claims to get to 0 to 50 in 10 seconds, which is respectable, I think, for a 125cc bike, but then from 50 to 60 takes a further 8 seconds. So yeah, I am tempted to try a performance test. We'll see how I'm feeling when we go for a ride shortly. And just engine close up there, it is a liquid cooled single. It's got a 10-litre fuel tank. I couldn't find any miles per gallon figures online, so if you've had one of these, let me know what sort of numbers you've had out of it. Put it in the comments so you can share with everybody else. It does say it's very fuel efficient, however, then doesn't give the miles per gallon. So yeah, 10 litres of fuel, but you let me know how many miles you'll get out of it. These are popular bikes. I'm sure there's lots of people out there that have had them or currently do have one. This bike weighs 127 kilograms. So for 125s, I think that's pretty light. Even the sports bikes that are trying to save weight, some of those are well into the 150 kilograms. So let me just have a little push because I've not managed to do that yet. I want to see how easy it is to do. Certainly easy to lift up off the side stand, and yeah, it's a really easy bike to move around. You can tell that instantly just from lifting it off the side stand. This bike would be perfect if you're looking for a downsize, or you're just worried about the weight, having to move something around in a shed, a garage, whatever. Perfect for it. Seat height is 815 millimeters, so it's not the shortest 125 I've ever been on. You can see straight leg, I am just about flat foot, but only just. It is quite a tall bike. There are a lot of shorter 125s out there is what I'm getting at. So you bear that in mind. I'm 5'8", 29-inch inseam. You can compare yourself to that. Not scrunched up, it's in a nice place, and because the tank kind of V's out like that, your knee is tucked underneath it, so you do feel like you're part of the bike. And even being that little bit taller, because it's only a light bike, it's still easy to move around or walk around. So yeah, I like it. I'm looking forward to riding it. As you all know, because it's a Japanese bike, these bikes always come with a premium price tag, don't they? Now, these bikes brand new, I'm sure would be considerably more expensive. However, this bike is currently up for sale with Moto for £2,899. I think that sounds right, considering, you know, it's a Honda. I'm sure it will be sold very quickly. It's not being in there very long. Bikes tend to not be in there for a great deal of time. Any bike less than £3,000 is cheap. However, there are brand new 125cc motorcycles in there from Benelli, from Vosges, from Mondial, from other brands, and they are cheaper than £3,000 and they're brand new. So you've got to weigh up, do you want a used Japanese bike or do you want a new Chinese made bike? Now, I know a lot of people will say straight away in the comments, I would go for a used Japanese bike, it will last forever. And looking around this bike, I would say somebody has looked after it. Even though it's 4 years old, it looks brand new. So yes, this is wearing very well for its years. However, so will those Chinese bikes if you look after them. If you don't, yeah, they'll fall apart like this would fall apart. If you didn't look after this, it won't last. So the key is looking after it. Drop me a comment. What do you think? New bike or used Japanese bike? Buttons on this one. Just the standard as far as buttons go. We've got indicators, horns, high-low beam, and there is a flash button hidden over there. Mirrors, yeah, tried to style them a little bit, but what I like with these, they do look quite big, in which case you're going to get a nice view behind you, but we'll see when we go for the test ride very shortly. Right hand side, just an engine start and your engine cut-off switch. The screen, I haven't had a look at this yet, so let's have a look together. Yeah, just what you'd expect really from a bike of a couple of years old. It hasn't got a TFT screen, it's got this nice LCD screen. You have got a fuel gauge, you've got your rev counter starting at the bottom going across, you've got a gear indicator, we've got a nice big prominent speedo. 21,830. So this bike has certainly been used by the previous owner or owners. I don't know, I've not checked the logbook. But what I will say, and I'll say it again, is the bike itself looks in great condition. So we'll see if it rides like it's a bike with 21,000 miles. We'll see. And there you go, you've got your clock on the top as well. So there is a lot of information going on that small screen, but it's all nice and clear. There's a bit of bright sky up there, so you can see a bit of reflection, but even with the reflection, you can still see everything that you need to clearly. Only thing left to do is to take it for a ride. We'll see how good it is when we are on the move. It looks mint. Let's see if it rides as good as it looks. and I think I've convinced myself on the walk round we're going to do a performance test. I want to see how this compares to the other bikes that I've tried. Let's go. Right, so before I do jump on this bike, where I mentioned before, there are a lot of bikes in Into Moto at the minute. It is rammed inside and outside. There are literally bikes everywhere. But this bike being 2,800, I mean, I know it's completely different style, but you've got the Suzuki Address, 0 miles, little over £2,000, so quite a big difference with that. You've also got, like, look how amazing that bike looks. So it's the FB Mondial HPS, and it is, what is it, the Fond Hipster. Absolutely gorgeous looking bike, that. I would bet, I'm sure they're a little over 3, maybe, I don't know, but certainly similar price tag. But that looks absolutely gorgeous. In fact, I've reviewed one of these before, but I just want to show you. Just look how lovely that bike looks. Beautiful thing. But they're the things really that you've got to be comparing this bike to, because price wise they're very similar. So do you go for one over the other? I know there's still going to be a lot of people that will say no, Japanese. There's always a lot of brand snobbery. Oh, I'm pleasantly surprised by the noise. I mentioned on the walk round, so what you've got is the Black Widow exhaust on this, but from starting it up it just has like a nice meaty growl to it. It's not too obnoxious, so we will see. Let me give it a little bit of a rev actually. This just sounds like a slightly louder version of a standard bike, and that for me is the best you can hope for when you change exhaust. You want it to sound a little bit meatier than standard. Comfort wise on this bike, yeah, the seat is something I'm just not sure about at the minute, because I'm finding myself sliding forward a little bit. So yeah, it's not what I would call my favourite seat I've ever sat on, but it's not uncomfortable. It's just gonna take some getting used to. It every time I move back, it's just making me slide forward just a touch. I am getting quite a bit of vibration through the bars, which I'm surprised at. Do some sneaking, bit of sneaky is what the doctor ordered. Get past this traffic. But yeah, there is quite a lot of vibration actually. I'm noticing it in my backside as well, and I'm surprised by that, because in the past when I've been on the Japanese bikes, that's one thing that you generally don't get. You tend to not have the vibration. That tends to be more on the cheaper motorcycles, and this is not a cheap motorcycle. This is a Honda. It's not a bad experience, don't get me wrong. I'm not for 1 minute slating this bike. I actually really like the ride of it. I'm just noticing a little bit of vibration that ordinarily on the Japanese bikes I've never really experienced before. Certainly don't get that on the Suzuki bikes. They always tend to be really smooth. So do the Kawasaki's. You let me know if you've got a CB or you've had one. Did you have the same slight bit of vibration? It's not like mega, you know, there are bikes that vibrate more. I just think it's uncharacteristic of one of the big Japanese brands. They tend to be like silky smooth and everything, a bit vibey, nice and smooth with the gear changes. The one thing I will say is where the gear change is, where the gear lever is on your foot, I'm finding it, so I don't look down while I'm riding, but I'm finding that where my foot sits, if you imagine for a second that my hand is a foot, where my foot sits on the peg, I'm having to kind of tilt my foot in to do the gears like that, and it just seems like the lever is just very much over towards the bike, and you've got to like move your foot to get it. If you just keep your foot straight and go up, you miss the lever altogether. So that, again, I want to know, is that normal? It's not a criticism of the bike, it's just sometimes when you jump on as many bikes as I do, when you get a bike that's slightly different to other bikes, you just have to adapt and ride accordingly. But that's just how I'm finding it different to most bikes. We are at my usual place, so I'm going to just spin it round on this roundabout. I'm going to pull up, but I don't want to pull up for too long. For people who've never seen my channel before, you won't know what I'm going to do, but ultimately I am going to stop. I'm going to give it the beans. I'm going to try and get to 60 mile an hour before a point down this road, and then I can compare it to other 125s that I've been on that have got to certain places. So let me just run through it. So I've stopped at the same place. There's a grid down there. Now that grid is my starting point. I'm going to keep it in gear only because I want to move off quickly. I don't want to stay here for too long. From a standing start, give it the beans up the road, and there's a sharp left bend just before a white building down the bottom. Now all the bikes I've tried, I tried to get to 60 mile an hour before that bend starts. There isn't a lot of bikes that have made it. The only bike of this type that has made it is Suzuki's GSXS. All the other bikes that I've tried have been the sporty 125s. The CBR, for instance, from Honda managed it, and that managed it by the first tree on the left hand side, which is very good as far as performance goes. Now this claims to be able to get to 60 mile an hour in 18 seconds. So that's basically it. I'm going to try and get to 60 mile an hour before that bend. If I can't get to 60 mile an hour before that bend, when the bend's finished, it goes into a bit of a straight, I'll try and get to 60 mile an hour on that bit. And the reason I do that is there are still 125cc motorcycles out there that do not get to 60 mile an hour. I have been on one, so we've got to see if it's going to do that. It is comparable, as I've said, to the Suzuki GSXS. It's going to be similar priced, I'm sure. They usually are, aren't they? Honda, Yamaha, like the MT, Kawasaki Z125, you know, they're all of the big Japanese bikes. They're all very comparable on price and performance. So I'm expecting this to be up there. We shall see. Anyway, it is around that time where traffic's building up, so I'm gonna just go as soon as I get a gap, but I want to make sure the gap is big enough to get to 60 mile an hour because there's bloody traffic down there. Right, I'm gonna give it some. Let's go. Oh, come on, it's done it. Well, just well played. I had an indicated 60 miles per hour before that bend. It's beat the MT 125. That is impressive. It's only got 13 horsepower, whereas the Suzuki, I'm pretty sure, is like 14 point something, so it's got an extra horse in it. So with the extra horse, I thought this was not going to be anywhere near the Suzuki, and yeah, it did get to 60 mile an hour slightly further on down the road than what the Suzuki did, but it still got to 60 mile an hour, so that has really impressed me. Now I know people will say you should use a GPS, and that's something that I'm hopefully going to bring to the channel. I want to have something like a GPS reader, or something that I can just stick on the bars so you guys can see a GPS speed as opposed to a speedo speed, because we all know speedos, they can be out. In fact, they're always all out, and how far out they are tends to get worse the faster you go. The more speeds, the more inaccuracies that tend to happen. So I get that. And this performance test, it's just a bit of fun for me as well, to have an indicated 60 speed before that corner of this type of bike. There is only the GSXS 125 prior to this that managed it. So yeah, I'm really impressed. Everyone has their own opinion, don't they? Everyone likes what they like, and I would personally say that I think the MT is a nicer looking bike. It looks a little bit more sinister and a little bit more, it just looks like a little bit more as far as bikes go. I think Honda always tend to play fairly safe when it comes to the styling, and that's not a bad thing, and it's not a criticism. I just find them to be nice looking without any kind of wow factor, and that's how I feel about this bike. It just looks like a generic 125cc bike that is very well made, but there's nothing about this bike that would make me stop and go, oh wow, look at that. It rides probably one of the nicer 125s, and performance certainly of this style, it's only a close second to the GSXS from Suzuki, and everybody raves about that bike being the best performing 125 of that type. Well, this isn't far behind it. It really isn't. Soaking up the bumps nicely, but you would expect that. You're on what I would call a premium 125, because they are. It's a Honda. It's a premium 125. It comes with the premium price tag, and it delivers looks wise. And I know that's always something that people will have different opinions on, so let me know your opinion. But ultimately for me, I've said my piece. It's an okay looking bike. It's not something that I would give a second glance to. I mean, bizarrely, like out here there's a Benelli BN over there, and yes, it's in like a really bright green colour and the wheels are green, but that for me looks a nicer looking bike than this. It looks a little bit flashier. It looks like it's got a little bit more about it than this. This is like a bit of a dull colour scheme. It's like a gloss black with a bit of silver on, and it kind of just looks like, yeah, it's very nicely made, but it doesn't have anything that makes me go wow. It's certainly not a patch on the Mondial hipster at the side of me. This is where Honda differ. They haven't done like Mondial and gone for a bike that looks amazing to grab your attention. They've not gone with like Benelli and gone for a really bright colour scheme to grab your attention. They've let the ride do the talking, and that's exactly what they have done, because the bike itself, whilst there's nothing kind of outstanding as far as looks goes, as far as riding goes, this is a nicer bike to ride than those two bikes that I've mentioned. So it has blown a lot of bikes out the water. So yeah, I think for me personally, the £2,899 to own this bike is actually a really good option. Comparing it to the newer bike Honda have done, it's a pleasure to ride. So it's for sale at Intumoto. I'm nearly like giving myself whiplash looking up. Oh god, that hurt my neck. But it's for sale at Intumoto. If you're interested, I'll put a link in the description. Thank you, and catch you on the next one. Laters.